This is the Dallas Prospect Live with DDP. Every legend was once a prospect. The Dallas Prospect is funded by viewers like you through Patreon and PayPal. To support the show, visit patreon.com/the Dallas Prospect or become a member by clicking the join button. Now let the show begin.
Okay, what is up, guys? This is Derek Kirby back with another edition of Mavericks Postgame, and today, unfortunately, we had a rough go of things. The Clippers take this game by 8 points, 130 to 122, and while this was a very chippy game early on, like there's a lot to be said for how tense this was. Both of these teams were under a lot of pressure just based on how the previous two games had gone. I think Dallas had largely outplayed the Clippers through two games, and a lot of people in the national media were starting to basically put the Clippers on blast and say that if Dallas took a 2-1 lead here tonight, they were basically picking Dallas to win the series. And yeah, with that kind of pressure, you saw it getting to guys on the Clippers. Now, Kawhi Leonard is a Terminator, so he doesn't really care about those kind of things. He just goes out and destroys. But you did see the Clippers' second star, Paul George, also known for the better part of the rest of this show now as Pandemic P, pretty much melting down on Instagram, doing the whole like, I don't even care, bro. What do you care about? What do you care that I'm having a rough game? I don't even care. Translation, I care immensely. That is where that is at for them. But you saw it even in this game on the Mavericks side as well. I still think the officiating sucks in this series. I still think the Clippers are getting away with a lot of things, and it's not even just a matter at this point of saying like, hey, it's have versus have-nots. I don't even think that that's what this was here. I think the Mavericks have garnered a bit of a reputation where officiating crews just don't want to give them calls. Like Luka's already got he's got the Euro player kind of mentality to him, which is to say he accentuates contact. All players do it. Like, trust me, you can find plenty of American players that do it too. By no means am I trying to lay this on that. I'm just saying, like, that's the perceived reputation. And so I think with the Mavericks having a couple of European stars, that's like a weird assumption. This is total speculation, but like a weird assumption that's kind of being laid at their feet. And so, yeah, you have moments where they're clearly being fouled and they're not getting calls. Other times, you have guys flop against them, like the little confrontation with Luka and Harrell early in the game, where Harrell 2 or 3 plays in a row basically takes just an extra little subtle little shove or push at Luka. Luka gets frustrated. They get tangled up after a rebound, and Luka gives a little push, nothing much, certainly not enough that the refs even felt the need to address it. They call a double foul and then a double tech, but Harrell hits the ground like he's been shot. Luka pretty much says, "Stop flopping, man." At which point, Harrell jumps up, tries to get in Luka's face. Luka, to his credit, does not flinch, does not back down. And yeah, it's a weird bit where you got a role player. Montrezl Harrell is a wonderful player for the Clippers off the bench. He is going to be probably the third finalist, the third place finish for Sixth Man of the Year this year. But it is a weird thing that it's like a trend where you got role players and more so guys off the bench who want to step up and run their mouth to Luka about Luka. That's a weird trend there. Anyway, double fouls assessed, double technicals assessed. That's week 2. Let the guys talk. Like, you want to call double fouls because they're getting a little bit chippy with each other? Fine. But you don't need to assess technicals. Nothing happened. Anyway, moving on. Luka in this game, I felt like, yeah, the Clippers did things a little bit differently. They had more of Morris on him, kind of like I thought. But even though he was able to get initial penetration to the basket, you weren't seeing him just take over in the first half in that regard, kind of like you were able to see in the first two games, particularly in game 2. And as a result of that, it really put strain on the Dallas offense. The guys had to make these kickouts. And where this game ends up turning is in the second quarter, wherein the Mavericks basically, I think they gave up 45 points in the second quarter, which is a NBA, or not an NBA record, a Mavericks record for points allowed to an opponent in the playoffs. Just a really, really tough deal there. And they're down 14 at the half. Luka is not looking good. He's got something like 8 points at this point. The Mavericks are missing tons of threes. Luka is 4 of 10 at the line on free throws. Just really, really struggling immensely through this. Let me see. Yeah, so at half, Luka was 3 of 9 from the, or at one point he was 3 of 9 from the field, 1 of 3 at the line. That was early on. He draws a foul right before the half on a 3. He baits Morris into fouling him, but then misses 2 of the 3 free throws. You could just tell he didn't quite look right. He has been dealing with that slight ankle sprain since game 1, and I don't know to what extent that might have had a factor or just a general, a little bit of exhaustion, honestly. Like, yes, he's 21 years old, but you are talking about a guy who attacks the basket the past couple games more than anyone else in the league. Like I said, Russell Westbrook in the regular season led the NBA with drives to the basket with, I want to say, 20.8 per game. Luka was doing like 30 plus in each of the first 2 games. And the only reason he didn't have a lot more in game 2 is because he didn't have to play a whole lot in the second half because of his own foul trouble. But regardless, it kind of just set up in a way where you're like, all right, well, the Mavericks are missing a ton of threes. The Clippers are knocking it down. The Clippers shot like 15 free throws in the second quarter. I don't think the Mavericks had any other than the Luka misses towards the very end of the quarter. He had, like, in the last 3 minutes, a few missed free throws that added to that. But it just was not going. The Mavericks were shooting 26.3% from 3 and 53.8% at the line at half. That's from Tyler Adams on Twitter. Carlisle, man, he's been great in the first 2 games with his in-game adjustments. I did not think that he had a good counterpunch ready tonight. Like, he went away from the formula that worked well for him. Montrezl Harrell had a big impact in this game, and he really wasn't much of a factor the first 2 games. Part of that was Carlisle's decision to play Boban heavier minutes on Harrell and really negate him just by way of his size. And the Clippers got Harrell to leak out some in fast breaks, and he was doing a great job of getting up the court and sealing for transition fouls to get to the line. So maybe Carlisle was afraid of putting Boban on him and having Boban lose in this foot race. I don't know. Regardless, it just set up in a situation where it's like, okay, so one of those things that we did that took out one of their major players is not working now. And now Boban, who's been a very good piece for us off the bench. I think they said in 23 minutes of the first 2 games, he had something like 17 rebounds, I want to say. Or was it the flip of that? It was something to that extent. I want to say it was 23 minutes, 17 rebounds in this series. Phenomenal production, regardless, off the bench for him. And it just was not working. As a result, the Clippers have a 68-54 lead at the half. And there's not a lot you feel like, if you're Dallas, that you can hang your hat on in a positive way, right? You're 5 of 19 from 3. At the foul line, you're not converting well. The Clippers, meanwhile, were 40% from 3 and 12 of 13 at the line at the half. So Dallas needed a major, major turnaround. And towards the end, they kind of started to get it. They were able to whittle down the 14-point lead a couple times to single digits. I think they got to 8 a couple of times. But for the most part, the Clippers just would not let them get close. Shamet had a fantastic game for them, 18 points for him. Kawhi was an absolute monster in this game. He has 36 points, 9 rebounds, 8 assists. It felt like he hardly ever missed, but he was 13 of 24, so he did obviously miss. Only 4 3-point attempts for him in the game. I thought that was pretty dominant too, how he was working all that in the mid-range and getting to the basket. He was muscling through contact and just pretty much doing whatever he wanted. Also added in a block and 2 steals, so complete work. Who wasn't work for the Clippers in this game. And really the only reason that I felt like Dallas still has a shot to steal another game in this series at least. Paul George has gone bye-bye. Like, he put the ice pack on his shoulder after the last game in the post-game interviews and everything. But at the same time, he struggled mightily in the playoffs, both of his 2 seasons with Oklahoma City. And now he looks kind of like a shell of himself. He had 27 points in game 1. And the last 2 games, he's been just a ghost. Just a ghost. At one point in this game, he had missed 12 of his last 13 shots. Now in this game, he ends up shooting 3 of 16, 1 of 8 from 3. Ends up with 11 points, 9 assists, 9 rebounds, 7 assists. So a near triple-double, but just dead on arrival as far as his offensive production. Does not look comfortable or confident shooting the ball. And I don't know, man. I don't know, because he got his first bucket on like the first possession for the Clippers, driving to the basket, laying it up. And so if he can't find anything, whether it's a bum shoulder or just his confidence shattered, if he can't find anything, Dallas still has a shot. But they're going to have to now make some counter punches because, yes, Patrick Beverley was out this game, and that meant I felt Dallas had another chance to seize control of this series. However, the Clippers made the, I think, very good adjustment. Instead of playing Reggie Jackson in the starting lineup, who was disastrous for them in Game 2, not saying he can't have a role for your team, but you don't want him starting because he's just too much of a score-first point guard. You need someone that will basically be your spot-up guy and all of that, but hustle plays and all of that for you. And Shamet was very much a quality interjection in that role by Doc Rivers. He had been terrible his first 2 games of the series, but he ended up being one of the major impact players for the Clippers in this game, obviously the second leading scorer. Then, Marcus Morris, going to be Marcus Morris, 4 of 5 on 3, 14 points, agitating, constantly mixing it up. Very good at subtle agitation in his role there. And you saw it with other guys too, not just Luka, not just pestering Luka. You saw other Mavericks getting frustrated with him as well. Speaking of agitating, Montrezl Harrell, I mentioned earlier how he was constantly barking at Luka and how they had their little scuffle earlier. Well, he keeps lobbing a lot of derogatory terms out there. Luka, there's trash talk, things like that happen, but you do get a situation there where the camera catches him basically calling Luka pussy ass white boy, I believe is what it looked like he was saying. Yeah. I mean, worse is said on the court for sure, but I still think it's a weird look when you got a bench player, even a great bench player, running his mouth about a superstar, and a superstar who coming into the game was averaging 35 in the series, 35, like 8 and 8 in the series in just 33 minutes. So I mean, it kind of works out that way where I guess the Clippers get the last laugh here in this case for this game because, yeah, as the Mavericks are just constantly hanging around 14 points, they can finally in the second half start shooting a little bit better, just a hair better. But what they can't seem to do is get any defensive stops. Whether it's Kawhi taking over, whether it's the Clippers knocking down threes or getting to the line, they just keep hanging around like in that 14 to 17 point advantage range. And then you get the Luka ankle turn, and that was a very scary moment. He's guarding Kawhi driving to the basket. Kawhi's leg comes out, kind of kicks Luka as his foot is planted. His knee goes out first, and then the ankle rolls. Now, he missed time separately a couple different times this season with a right ankle sprain. This was a left ankle he turned on the play. And yeah, it didn't look good. He limped very awkwardly to the back, to which I wondered, is there really not someone or 2 people that he can drape an arm over, or you can't bring him a wheelchair or something? Why has he got to go on a half-mile, one-legged hop desperately to the back? Now, if it's an ankle, it hurts like hell when it happens, but you can tape it up and play through it, as long as there's not anything too bad structurally. And Luka does come back, ends up starting the fourth quarter. That's a bit of a controversial decision there because you look at him on the sideline and you're thinking, he looks like he can barely stand on it. He's wincing just walking on it. You really expect me to believe he's going to go out there and do much of anything? He played about 3 or 4 more minutes to start the fourth quarter. Basically, was just standing out there as a decoy, but in the midst of it, he does end up having a ball bounce pretty much right into his lap, and that results in Luka Dončić recording the first playoff triple-double in Mavericks history at age 21, 175 days. That's according to Mavs PR. He is the third youngest player ever to record a triple-double in the playoffs, only behind Magic Johnson and LeBron James. Pretty incredible stuff there. And this is, I believe, Followell said on the, if you're watching Fox Sports Southwest, Mark Followell pointed out this was actually the 199th playoff game in franchise history. So a little bit of cool history there for Luka. But obviously, Luka as well would trade that in a heartbeat if it was a win or even a healthy ankle at this point, because now he's going to have his work cut out for him, because the Mavericks play again Sunday. We keep on this every other day kind of setup, but it's not even a full 48 hours. They play 3:30 Central Time, which means he's got 5.5 hours less basically to recover from this, and that's going to be huge there, like how he can bounce back. Now, Dallas, in his absence in this series, whether it was his struggles and his tweaked ankle in the beginning of game 1 or the second half of game 2 when he was in foul trouble, the Dallas bench has actually played fabulous against the Clippers in this series. And when Luka goes out again, they make another little run, cutting it to, I think they got it past 8. It got down to at least 8. They might have actually whittled it to 6. But regardless, the Clippers ultimately have enough to answer it, but you do see a lot of guys stepping up. Seth Curry, take a bow, dude. This is one of those games. I said he's feast or famine. Well, this was a feast. 22 points, 9 of 11 shooting, 4 of 4 on 3. I wanted to get that man some more three-point looks with the way he was shooting, because he was fire. Tim Hardaway Jr., very slow in the first half, and yes, the second quarter is where things got away, so you can certainly say, hey, it might have been a case of too little too late with his shooting. Fine, fair point. But in the second half, particularly the third quarter, he does get it going. 9 of 19 for the game, 4 of 10 from 3, 22 points of his own. Trey Burke had a couple great plays in a row there. He's also dealing with a bum ankle, don't forget. He's 10 points, 4 of 8 from the field, 2 of 5 from 3. Dude has earned a new contract with the Mavericks, I think, next year. But for the Mavericks, the standout in this game has to be Kristaps Porzingis, because Porzingis in his third career playoff game put up a major stat line here. 34 points, 13 rebounds, 11 of 18 from the field, 5 of 9 from 3. Very impressive stuff there. 7 of 7 at the line as well. Very, very strong production from KP, and also had a block as well in this, and some good defense. This is the first Maverick to record a 30-10 game. Is that correct? Yeah, because Luka hadn't had a 10-rebound game yet in this series. So the first Maverick since Dirk in Game 3 of the 2011 Finals, when he had 34 and 11. KP is the first Maverick since then to record a 30-10 game for the Mavericks. So really like what we saw out of KP here. You know, I want to see Dallas work with him a bit more, because it felt like, I still feel like, even though you saw moments before Luka's ankle injury where they were kind of working off each other a little bit, but I still feel like we're kind of caught in this mode where it's Luka works for a while and he'll find his shooters, and that might be KP on the perimeter, but it's like Luka works for a while, then KP works for a while, then Luka works for a while. I want to see more of them working together in that way. And you saw a little bit of that in the third quarter, like a couple plays in a row shortly before the Luka ankle sprain. And then in the, obviously, fourth quarter, after Luka's gone for good for the night, you get KP coming in and running roughshod briefly. And yeah, this is pretty big for Dallas, because if you're going to keep getting the production out of the Clippers bench that they're getting, like, Paul George might be MIA, but Zubac is still doing solid work for them. Zubac also never gets called for fouls, which is weird because he definitely commits fouls. At one point, Paul George gets a layup because Zubac straight up forearm shoves KP in the back out of the way, so Paul George has a wide open layup suddenly. Very strange there. But with the Clippers bench, when they're finding guys like Shamet, like he's not a bench player, but Marcus Morris doing work. Lou Williams always can be a walking bucket if he needs to, but the Clippers bench gives them 54 in this game. That's a big swing. Now, game 2, Dallas's bench went for north of 60, so that's phenomenal. But it is worth saying, if this is going to be a battle of the benches and you're getting 54 out of LA's bench, yeah, you're going to be hard-pressed to hang tight, even on a night when Paul George is like 3 of 16 from the field. And Kawhi's in Terminator mode, which doesn't help either. So Dallas is going to have to figure out a counterpunch because they've got some problems. The interior defense, the half-court defense, started to get dissected by LA. They were getting a lot of dump-off passes underneath. Montrezl Harrell had his breakout game, I felt, for the series. Even though he dealt with some foul trouble, he absolutely was an energizer for them, and he made some big plays. And, if you can't figure out a way to get more productivity out of your offense in the first half, I know things went ice cold, but you have to have a counter. And I still feel like this team in the third quarter, when it was in danger of just completely irrecoverably falling away from them, I still feel like this team has too much of a lenience on three-point shooting. Now, they did get them going in the fourth quarter, but I would have said, hey, man, unless it's KP in this game or Seth Curry, I don't really look for guys to shoot threes unless it's a wide open three. I don't want to see Maxey shooting threes. I don't want to see Dorian Finney-Smith shooting threes in those cases. Hell, Trey Burke, I don't want to see him really shooting threes. He was 2 of 5. He was, okay in this game from 3, but I wanted higher percentage shots, and I think that even as the broadcast, Harper talking about it, Derek Harper saying basically, okay, the outside shot's not working. You need to attack the basket. You'll open things up from there. If you get a little bit of momentum by attacking the basket, finishing inside, or at least getting to the line and converting there, you'll be able to weather some of this storm. Well, they took like 4 threes in the next 5 possessions. So it just kept laying bricks over and over and over again until it basically became a problem for them to really rally. So, yeah, there's other issues for Dallas in this game. Some of the X factors are there. I felt, like I said, Seth, fantastic. I think Maxey is playing great defense. I know he's on Kawhi a lot, but Kawhi is a monster here. And I feel like a lot of times Maxey is playing very good defense. It's just better offense from Kawhi. The problem with that is that Maxey is basically expending all of his energy on that end of the floor, such that he is bricking all of his three-point attempts short. We're not getting the production we need there, and that is putting us in a very difficult position because things work better when we can open up the floor a little bit, stretch the floor, and Maxey has been a pretty big part of that throughout the year, having basically a 5 in this case, who can shoot threes and stretch the floor, like a role player 5, not KP, obviously. We already have that. But, yeah, let's look here. Maxey for the game, 5 points, 4 rebounds in 35 minutes. The rebounds department pretty much fell back to his usual season average of 5.4. Last game he had 10 on the board. 0 of 4 from 3, so really rough for him there. 1 of 5 overall. Not a good night for him. Dorian Finney-Smith, 1 of 5 on 3 as well. His stellar performance is starting to tail off a little bit. He is in 31 minutes, 11, 7, and 4. So he's still finding ways to be productive, but the three-point shot and the fire that we were getting from him, where he was giving you 16, 17, 18 points a game, that has absolutely trailed off a little bit. Let's see. Boban in this actually did get 10 minutes, 3 points, 2 boards. So from a minute standpoint, Rick gave him about the standard. He just didn't have as much productivity there. Rick is still also trying to figure out DeLon Wright. He does get his first points of the series, plays 9 minutes here. I still have some mixed feelings on DeLon Wright and whether or not it makes sense to keep playing him big minutes, but I understand Rick is trying to figure some things out. I think that Rick is trying to find whatever good defenders he can on this roster, of which there are not many, and kind of roll them out there in hopes that it can at least siphon some of the, plug up some of these defensive holes, I should say. And in doing so, you're kind of jeopardizing in some of these choices the offensive firepower that brought you to the dance. Now, in this game, that firepower wasn't really there for the first half anyway, so I understand it a little bit more. As things went south in that second quarter, it makes sense that you would basically look at that and say, yeah, okay, we need to make some real adjustments here because this isn't working. So we have to find some guys who can slash to the basket. DeLon Wright has that ability. And granted, he didn't play in that stretch. His minutes came earlier in the game, I believe. But you got to find something, some little spark that works. JJ Barea, I still think does not match up well here given his reduced mobility at this point. I'd like to see Barea get some burn, but I don't know when that would come. Had this game turned into a blowout, which, by the way, I'm very proud of this team for not letting that happen and continuing to fight and persevere. I think there's a lot to be said about that. But Rick's got to find that spark somewhere. Brad Townsend pointed out on Twitter at the time the 23 points in the second quarter for the Mavericks was the second lowest scoring quarter of the series. The lowest was when they scored 13 in the third quarter of Game 1 after the Porzingis ejection. That is where it goes wrong, where you basically give up 45 and score 23. You're going to be hard-pressed to win too many times in that situation. Let me see. I had a note here. This was at halftime, Charles Barkley talking about how the Mavericks defenders, or not even just defenders, the Mavericks players, KP, Luka, basically how they were remaining fearless even as the Clippers were trying to punk them a little bit, whether it was Montrezl Harrell or Marcus Morris or whoever. This was Barkley at halftime. Quote, Porzingis and Dončić are not backing down. I love this, man. You know, they're trying to bully them and they're standing up to the bully. Dallas has got a bright future. I dig it. I really dig it. I think that chip is on the shoulder there, and I do like the fearlessness from Luka. I think if you're his team, you look at that and you have to have some admiration there because it's not just someone who shrinks from that adversity. The competitor in him basically rises to that challenge. But unfortunately, in this case of the game, the Clippers were able to largely hold him in check. Again, I think the ankle might have been a little bit of a problem beforehand. I'm talking about the right ankle, by the way. Then he rolls the hell out of, I'm pretty sure, the left ankle. And yeah, now we find ourselves in a very precarious position as we head towards Game 4 on Sunday. This series, I think they're going to have to lean more heavily on KP because KP already showed in this game 34 and 13, 11 of 18 from the field, 5 of 9 from 3. He's already shown he can be a real difference maker in this series. It's just a matter of how they want to implement him a little bit because I think in the first 2 games, or at least the first game and a half prior to, because KP misses basically the entire second half of the first game, and then Luka basically, foul trouble, misses the entire second half of the second game. You can basically say in there, mix and match however you want to. We've not had a lot of opportunity with him and Luka on the floor together, but when they've both been on the floor together, I think Luka has been so effective that we've largely leaned on him, and I get that. That makes sense. You're averaging 35, 8 and 8 and 33 minutes coming into this game. It makes total sense to do that. But I felt like while KP had a stellar game here, a lot of that came on a late push after the Dončić ankle turn and then in the fourth quarter as well. I would like to see us get KP going more early in the game. I think that, we saw at times, I think it was the Portland Trailblazer game in the bubble where KP had 16 in the first quarter, then like nothing in the second quarter. Almost, I don't even know if he had any shots in that second quarter. Then in the third quarter, he came out fire again with 14 points. Then in the fourth quarter, it took until like 4.5 minutes left before he got on the board again, because that was the first time the offense had really gone back to him. And it's like, what are you doing? He had 30 going in. Like, first of all, excluding you forgetting about him in the second quarter, he had 30 going into the fourth quarter and was cooking. He wasn't even high up on minutes yet. You should have been going to him more. And now you only figure him out late in the fourth quarter. And oh, look, now he's fouled out because of shenanigans. He picks up 2 fouls in the span of about a minute and a half. And now his day is done. I think Dallas at times needs to lean more on him. I understand that he is more the Robin than the Batman here. But I think even though it's easy to look at it that way, I think from a production standpoint and an impact standpoint, you can really call this 1A and 1B with him and Luka. It doesn't have to be Batman and Robin. You don't have to say, hey, let's try and get Luka going and see if we can get some of these shooters, and then we'll try and work in KP where we can. No. I'm not saying force feed him, but I'm saying look to get him involved early. Let him kind of do that Dirk thing where coming into the game early on, doesn't have to be immediate, but certainly in the first few possessions, get him a couple looks, a couple easy looks, and then work your way back through him every so often to see if you can kind of keep leaning on that, because the Clippers don't have a real answer for KP. Yeah, Zubac is a physical presence down low, but KP in that mid-range and from 3 can do a lot. He is something that they don't really have much of an answer for. So use it, especially now, because now, even if Luka is good to go, the thing that's been most effective for Luka through 2 games and really through most of the bubble play was his relentlessness with how he attacked the basket and found shooters, and how he basically shot like 73% when getting within 3 or 4 feet of the basket. Just stellar on that front. But even before the ankle turn tonight, he was struggling with that. Zubac was actually giving him trouble, contesting a couple shots, getting a piece of a couple layup attempts. And now he's going to be a little bit more hobbled. And so because he's been a little bit iffy on shooting threes thus far, Luka's been better through the first 2 games. But because he's not a great three-point shooter, he can certainly hit big threes, though. I think you need to lean more heavily on KP and say, all right, Unicorn, you're healthy, yeah. You got a left heel contusion, but you've played great the past 2 games after the first one. So, yeah, it's all you, buddy. Maybe not all you. That's not the way to put it, but it's you. You're the main weapon now. Let's see what we can do. You're going to have to use Luka in a little bit more of a reserved, not reserve as in bench, reserve as in like you can't just put it all on his shoulders and say, attack the basket 100 times a game and try to kick out, get me 22 points plus at the basket, and then also kick out for like 10 assists for 3-pointers. You can't keep putting that on him every game right now. I think you're going to have to let him nurse this ankle as much as humanly possible. That means keeping his minutes in check as best as possible, and that means when he's on the floor, still trying to lean on your bench players. Curry has been phenomenal in this series. I think he's made I think they said during the broadcast, he's made like 23 of 33 shots or 23 of 30 shots in this series. Just stupid dialed in. He has found that rhythm and stroke he had prior to the season being suspended back in March. Lean on it. Lean on it. Lean on KP. Lean on some of these role players who actually are stepping up. Because if you can do that, and you can get a nice healthy little dose of Luka here and there, I still think you have an opportunity to do it. But if you try and ride Luka into the ground, you risk further damage. I know ankles have a little bit more give in that department than something like a knee or certainly like an Achilles or something. By the way, I'm knocking on wood just as a precaution. But still, I think you need to be careful. Back in 2003 in the Western Conference Finals, the Dallas Mavericks had Dirk go down with a sprained MCL. It was, I think, the first or second game of the series, and he did not return in the series. The Mavericks lost in 6. That would have been Dirk, Nash, and Finley going to the NBA Finals. Instead, they lost in 6 to the Spurs, who went on to beat Jason Kidd and the Nets in the NBA Finals. Mark Cuban and at the time coach Don Nelson clashed heavily on this subject. Dirk wanted to play. Mark Cuban wanted Dirk to play. Don Nelson said, no, he's the face of the franchise. You don't even realize yet what kind of guy you have here. You don't risk him for a single season. You don't risk him for in this situation. Even if you could somehow write it all the way to a title now, you don't risk what his career and legacy could be for this one moment. A knee is different than an ankle, but I want to kind of caution that same messaging here. With Dallas down 17 going into the fourth quarter and Luka clearly hobbled just walking, I didn't like the decision to send him back in. Even though he didn't really push himself and the 10th rebound to give him the record-breaking triple-double fell right into his hands, that's great. But it's also like the emptiest triple-double ever. I know it's not even anything he cares to acknowledge at this point. 13, 10, and 10 is his stat line. But yeah, it's frustrating for sure because you want to make sure that you're protecting the face of the franchise for the next 10, hopefully much more than that, but 10 plus years. You must defend him as if your franchise itself depends on it, as if your franchise's entire future, and its mere existence rides on Luka being healthy and continuing to produce. So that's my word of caution there. Tough night for Dallas tonight. Too much Kawhi Leonard. For sure. Sage Mode says, yep, with this roster, it is not worth it. Yeah, I would agree. I think this team can certainly put up some more fight and do some things, but I don't want to risk that by any means. Cowboys X Factor, what's good? Trevor Foster. I'm more optimistic now than I was after the previous game. You're more optimistic now than you were after the previous game? Just because of the fight from the bench, I'm guessing? Luka's health is going to ride on a lot of this. His health very much matters. Hardaway and Curry went off. Luka needed to score more, though. Yeah, the Clippers did some things a little different with Luka, made it tougher for him. They still, they didn't do the change-ups I thought. I was surprised they still kept throwing Morris at him more, picking him up at times full court, and not throwing Kawhi or Paul George at him. But there's no doubt when Luka was attacking the basket, he was not nearly as productive or effective as he was in the previous 2 games. And that's why even before the ankle, I was immediately concerned. Something doesn't look right here. He doesn't look like he looks not a step slow, but he doesn't look comfortable. He doesn't look like he's creating the same kind of separation. There were times then when he drove and you could tell he was looking more so to pass, and the Clippers, with at times swarming defense, were able to intercept the pass and send it back the other way for a big play, whether it was a transition 3 or a dunk or whatever. So very, very much a concern for them that they're going to have to monitor, because he's not, whatever you thought of him this game, obviously it's not going to be any better on a bum ankle Sunday. Credit to the Mavs for not giving in and fighting until the very end. I agree. Carlisle should have used Boban to guard Harrell, says Gideon. I agree. I thought that was a very effective counterpunch he offered in the first 2 games that largely minimized Harrell. But I think LA did a better job of having Harrell contest some of these top of the key threes that Dallas likes to set up for its bigs, and then he's leaking out in transition. Not cherry picking by any means, but it's contest and then he's falling back in transition, and that's allowing him to get the outlet pass already down in the paint, whether he's got it on Curry or he's got it on, who else did he get with that? It was Curry once. Was it Dorian another time? I don't know. They're creating the mismatch in transition that's setting up for him to get right to the line. It's actually surprising he didn't get more just easy dunks in transition, but yeah. Paul George was terrible tonight. Pandemic P. Clippers need about 5 more games to find themselves. They are going to be unbeatable. So Dallas is the only team with a chance to beat them, in my opinion. Maybe. But Paul George is going to be a huge question mark for them. If they're going to be a team that can win a championship, Paul George has to be better, and he has not been good now, save for a game here and there for the last 3 years in the playoffs. And the fact that he keeps icing his shoulder and really hamming that up in post games whenever they lose kind of suggests he's either using that as an excuse, or if it actually is an issue with him. He had double shoulder surgery in the off season, like coming into this year. So if that's going to be the case, then okay, if he's not able to be what he needs to be for them, then that's going to be very problematic for them when they have to face, whether it's the Lakers or, if they get to the finals like the Bucks, whatever. Maker 4-5, what's good? Juan Borda, what's up? 6'6" and no hips. Interesting username. Are we really missing him, though? Oh, he's talking about Powell. Yeah, in a game like this, you're missing Powell for sure. You need front court depth anyway, and I think Maxey is gassed, and I think you'd have a little bit more you could offer to make the offense a little more dynamic if you had him. Drew Holiday in the offseason, if you could pull off that trade, would be fantastic, but we got to see what the cap situation looks like because he's on a fat contract, and acquiring him would cost a fair bit. And then you got to figure out, okay, now you got to send out more than obviously you're bringing in, which, to acquire a star player anyway. I think a Holiday as a star, not a superstar by any means. But I think he would fit well. And if you could get that, you would have to probably send out several role players just to make the math of it all work. Luka's been getting beat up all year. Kind of reminds me of the Michael Jordan's early years. Needs to beef up and hit the weights. Yeah, and he beefed up a bit from last year, from his rookie year for sure. But he needs to keep working on that and keep working on building strength in his body. I actually remember how many times in Dirk's first few years of his career that he battled ankle injuries as well. I think even in 2003 and 2004, ankles were a major problem for him. And he famously missed playing against Michael Jordan the last game he was going to ever play against Michael Jordan because he was so excited to get out there and play. He couldn't get his shoe quite on all the way. His heel wouldn't go in, and he tried to slam it down, slam his foot down in the locker room to shove his foot in, and he rolled his ankle doing that and had to miss the game. So, yeah, ankle is a very consistent thing if you're not careful. And, Steph Curry had a lot of ankle issues early in his career. So maybe Luka needs to get with his trainer because clearly whatever he's doing works. Let's see. Do you think Hardaway should take less shots? Get the ball more into Curry and Burke's hands, says MC Apollo. I think Hardaway is always going to be a high volume shooter. That's literally his entire career. He had 22 points in this game, took 19 shots, 10 threes. But, even though he shot about 40% this season, throughout his career, he's about a 33, 34% three-point shooter. And he's always been a a volume shooter. I think back to like Antoine Walker. He was a Maverick for 1 year. Then he was with Celtics. He was with the Celtics prior to that, and he was with the Heat for a while. So yeah, he's another example of that, I think. And so would I like him to take less shots? Yes, but for all the misses he laid down the first half, he was a big part of what kept him in it in the third quarter, where he had at least 13 points in the third quarter alone. He was making a lot of shots. Now, Curry, in a game like this, you need to feed Curry as much as possible, because at one point he's 9 of 10. Even on the last shot he misses, he should be going to the line, but he doesn't get the whistle. So it's a situation where if he's cooking like that, keep giving him the ball. If he's not cooking like that, then you have the quandary with Seth Curry that's always existed, that being the man is feast or famine. He's either this or he's 2 points on 1 of 5 shooting. That's Seth Curry. For the contract we got him, I like having him a lot. You get a guy shooting 45% the past 2 seasons, through 1,000 career NBA 3-point attempts. He's the second highest percentage all time, only to Steve Kerr. Yeah, I like that a lot. But it's hard to rely on that game in, game out. So in that case, you will need a guy like, right now at least, a guy like Hardaway. I still think there's a better than good chance Hardaway is brought back, because I think he's going to probably opt out of his player option and sign a new deal here for longer term security, because even though he's gotten a couple big contracts in his career, or rather the Knicks gave him a really big contract to leave Atlanta, he definitely has one more shot at a big contract here, I think. And I do think he'll probably get it here. Dallas likes his fit a lot. I don't like him as our third guy. I like him as, if he's our fourth guy, I like him pretty well. But I don't know what that adjustment needs to be, and we'll see what that looks like. But yeah, he's not an ideal third guy. He's a guy that can fill the role, and when he's on, damn does he fill the role. But when he's not on, then he can be pretty frustrating. Big O says Kleber played bad, missed a lot of open shots, which made things difficult for the Mavericks. The thing with Kleber, because he's having to guard Kawhi, it's such a thankless job, because especially in a game like this, where Kawhi is just an absolute machine, Terminator as is his nickname, nobody is stopping him. But Kleber did as well as you could on a lot of those possessions. I really think that he played hard, and he played fundamentally sound defense a lot, but it clearly is impacting him in terms of his rebounding and in terms of his three-point shooting, which is really, as far as the offense is concerned, the only looks he's going to get anyway. So it's completely sapping him of his productivity. And for a guy that I had said was going to be an X factor in how far we could potentially go in the postseason, that is huge. Clippers don't seem capable of stopping KP, Seth, and Hardaway offensive onslaught. They definitely can't stop KP. If KP's hitting his shots outside, no, they can't stop him. I mean, they could throw like Kawhi or something at him, which you saw that happen a couple times. You can bother him a little bit, but they've not been able to really, like when Dallas has gone to him the past couple games, they've not been able to really stop him. I'm trying to remember how many points he actually had in game 2. I want to say it was like 27. Let me see. Schedule. Okay, so he was 23-7 last game. So not quite as high as I thought, but I still think he is one of Dallas's greatest weapons they can throw at him, because, yeah, the Clippers don't really have an answer for him if he's hitting his shots outside. And if that's the case, then you're going to have to lean on that more anyway. Seth Curry, his father-in-law is the Clippers coach anyway. I loved seeing him rip Pandemic P and get a fast break reverse layup on him. If you don't know this story already, allow me to abbreviate this quickly because it's kind of amazing. So when Paul George was with the Pacers, and they were really good for a couple of years, battling with LeBron's Heat in the East, they went down to Miami in the playoffs. I think that year it was the second round, not the Eastern Conference Finals. Anyway, Paul George had been dating for quite some time Doc Rivers' daughter. Well, Paul George, while in Miami, went to a strip club and slept with a stripper. Knocked her up. This led to the end of his relationship with Doc Rivers' daughter. Now, years later, she's married to Seth Curry. So that's already interesting there. Seth Curry, on that play, rips the guy who cheated on his wife and then makes him look foolish with a transition layup. But then you think about when the Clippers first acquired Paul George, Doc Rivers basically having to say, well, you were with my daughter for a long time, then you cheated on her. Now I just have to pretend I don't care about that at all and be your coach. Really interesting, just the dynamic there. I feel like that would be a little uncomfortable, but obviously they've made it work for them. So that's just a very interesting NBA story that I always enjoy retelling or hearing. So, anywho, back to it. Yes, Curry, games like this, yeah. And if you can keep that consistency going with him, absolutely. He has been Dallas's best, single best shooter in this series so far. And through 3 games, based on what he's done, if I'm Rick Carlisle, I look at that and I say, all right, all in. Now, let me be clear. Curry has not played well this year when we've injected him into the starting lineup. Keep him coming off the bench, but give him healthy doses of minutes. That's my thought process there. And because our offense, we don't run set plays or anything like that. It really is a free-flowing offense. You get open, you find your space, and you get to spots that you typically like and get to. And someone like Luka has the kind of vision and precision passing to get you the ball in those spots. That's why Curry says the difference between 2016 when he was here for that 1 year versus his first year back here now is the offense. In 2016, a lot was drawn up for him to get to his spots and to set him up and put him in position. Now it's more random in terms of how it comes about, and as a result of that, it makes it where he will have inconsistent games, where he can have a game where he gets, hey, here's 11 shots and I knocked down 9 of them. Holy shit, I'm on fire. And then he comes out the next game, and now, in all the random action, he might only get 4 or 5 shots and make 2 of them. It just has a drastic change and difference on it. And someone like Hardaway, I think he basically says that's cool, that's cute, random. I'm going to still, go into business at times for myself, so to speak. I'm not saying he puts his own stats over other stuff by any means, but basically has that just shooter mentality where he's like, I don't care. I'm going to just go on my own and make something happen here, which is why at times you see him take just maddening shots in bad possessions. But he'll get his shots, and eventually he'll usually round into form as far as his production and impact on the game. Mavericks need another all-star or a good role player. Yeah, I talked about that before the deadline. I thought they needed a move to acquire basically their third guy. Now, they didn't make that move, and they showed that they were much better than I thought they were at the time anyway. So, hey, kudos to them. But there is still a lot of room to grow. And yes, there are things they undeniably need. How do I like the Mavs' chances now going forward, asks Big O. I like their chances to get another game. I do. I think based on the fight that you continue to see from this team and how some of these guys are stepping up and really continuing to produce, that they can get another one, especially without there actually being road games or home games. It's all neutral court. I think they can get another one, and that's really good. If you had told me, right now already, I said if they got a win, it's all gravy, baby. They already got that. If you can somehow get me another one, then this season's already a success. For what we projected going in, they've already exceeded those expectations. You want them to fight and be competitive in every single game. They have been. So, yeah, I think they probably don't have the experience or quite the right combination of players yet to be able to overcome this particular matchup. Had they drawn any number of other teams, let me put it this way. Had the Nuggets basically not dodged the Mavericks by resting all their guys in the last game, and they had ended up getting the 2 seed, they're now down 0-3 to the Jazz. I think Dallas would beat the Nuggets. I do. I think that they could go toe-to-toe. OKC does not look like the same team they did in the regular season either. I think if that had been the matchup somehow, they could take them. There's several matchups that I think Dallas would have had a really good shot. The Clippers are just a team with so much length, athleticism, scoring prowess, and tough-nosed, defensive-minded perimeter players that it really, really stretches us to the absolute maximum. Like, you basically have to bring your A game every single night, and maybe even your A-plus game. Doesn't have to be like a perfect 100, so to speak, on a grading scale, but you got to at least deliver a 95 every single night as far as your overall performance if you're going to beat this Clippers team, and let alone win the series somehow. So, yeah, I think in that context, we've already gotten everything I hoped for, and at this point, I'm trying not to get too high or too low at this point. You know what I mean? Especially too low. Like, I think even as this game was 17 points and Luka was hurt with his ankle, I was like, okay, let's hope it's not anything serious, like long term. And beyond that, let's go. Like, we've basically done it. Let's just see what these guys can fight, how they fight, and how they look, and we'll go from there. If this is not going good and the situation is bleak, and suddenly for the first time all year they do lose 3 games in a row, fine, but we've already exceeded expectations. I just want to see that heart and that fight. Do I think the Mavs can take it to 7? I would be shocked, honestly. I could see them getting it to 6, but 7 would stun me. I almost think the Clippers would need a substantial injury to do that. And to be honest, with Pat Beverly missing 2 of the first 3 games, I would have said, now he's not a substantial player for them, but I would have said that was your window of opportunity. If you could take a 2-1 lead, that was your window of opportunity to most likely push it to 7. Let's see, I'll take 3 more questions here and then call it. And yes, Gideon, you're right. I said 3-0 earlier. I was mistaken. It is 2-1. Donovan Mitchell in that first game dropped 57 in a loss. Yes, if you guys are on Facebook, check out the Prospect Army Facebook page. A lot of work goes there, not just the videos and all that, but links to articles that we submit, updates as it relates to the Mavericks, not even just prospect-centric content, but basically a hub for Mavericks news, Cowboys, all that. Good community over there. Go check that out if you're on Facebook. Banks says, I'm actually a Clippers fan, but stumbled upon this broadcast. Unfortunately, I don't see anyone limiting Kawhi but himself. If you had someone on defense, your defense would have been better this year. Yeah, we don't really have a defender. Dorian Finney-Smith is about it. And he was an undrafted guy out of Florida. Versatile defender, hustle player for sure. I like Dorian a lot, Dodo, but he's not the stopper on the perimeter against elite guys. He can slow him down just a hair, and to your point, no one's really going to slow down Kawhi right now, especially after the first 2 games with Dallas largely outplaying the Clippers despite a 1-1 series record. And it was clear from the jump tonight he was going to be in full Terminator mode. Only way I see you guys winning another one is having Reggie or Lou on the court. I was stunned you guys started Reggie Jackson in game 2, honestly. I was, because I was like, he can score, but he's also going to kill the flow of offense at times. And he did just that. Do you think the Clippers can repeat that 55% field goal on the team, or another game, or was it the defense that lacked? Yes, the Clippers are capable of replicating that productivity for two reasons. One, they were the second most efficient offense in the league this year in terms of points per 100 possessions, behind the Mavericks. And they also happen to be going up against Dallas, who is 17th rated defense this season in terms of overall defense. So, yes, they can absolutely do that again. Defense has been very suspect for the Mavericks this season. They just don't have enough that they could throw out there. So basically their hope is to try and outscore you. And if the Clippers have enough bench guys going, then they're going to be able to do that. Right now, even though Lou Williams didn't have to have a huge game for them, they had more than enough in this game with Kawhi, with Shamet. Morris gave them quite a bit. Like I said, 4 of 5 on 3. You got Lou Williams as well. So they've got more than enough firepower to do that. They're a top 5. They're number 2 rated offense and number 5 rated defense, I believe, this year. And I certainly think their defense is capable of getting into that top 3 come playoffs. DDP, Hardaway's got to go, brother. Yeah, well, we'll see what they end up doing with that, but every indication is they want to keep him. So that'll be interesting. I expect he'll probably get a new deal of some kind in the offseason. Who do I think will make the NBA Finals? I think it's going to be who comes out of LA, basically. The Lakers or the Clippers. I think the Clippers are the best team in terms of depth and everything, but if Paul George isn't right, then who the hell knows? And in the East, it's probably going to be the Bucks. I had the Bucks penciled in, but now I'm not so sure. It could be a Boston year, honestly. But, I like Toronto a lot, too. The East is interesting. I don't have the East as pinned down, but I think in the West, more than likely, it's going to be the Lakers or the Clippers. Do you think Luka's the type of guy to up his game even with a tough injury? I think he's got the heart and the mentality to do it, and I think he showed that just coming back into the game and trying to play tonight. There are going to be cynical people who look at that and say, oh, he only came in to get his rebound so that he could get his triple-double. Bitch, 1 rebound's not going to make a difference in his legacy. Are you kidding me? It's not like he went out there like, I have to prove that I can get a triple-double on 1 ankle. Like, no. Ball fell into his hands. He didn't even have to go get it. Like, he was out there because he was trying to fight through it. And yes, I believe that all the trash talk and the fact that he had been called by Montrezl Harrell earlier in the game a pussy-ass white boy, I'm pretty certain that kind of thing stuck in his craw a little bit, and so he didn't want to look like he wasn't tough enough to go back out there and try to fight through it. But he played for 4 minutes, was in clear pain, limping around, and after he got the rebound, he was just like, nope, gotta come out. So we'll see, man. I'm hopeful that he's all right, but by no means do I risk the future by trying to play him now. I don't think I don't do that at all under any circumstances. The Luka Harden dynamic is basically their game. Like, Luka has modeled quite a bit of his game off of Harden's mentality, how he attacks the basket and everything. But Harden's a much better shooter than Luka, but Luka is a much better passer than Harden. So it does a disservice to both of them, honestly, by people saying that they're the same thing, just one guy's white and European, whereas the other one is black. I don't like that argument there. As far as like why people love one but hate the other, I think a lot of people, there's plenty of Luka backlash around the country who there are people that think he gets too much positive press, and whether they're trying to push Trae Young or whoever you want to call Jason Tatum, whatever young star players out there, they're always going to throw Luka under there and make it sound like he's empty numbers or somehow stat padding, which is bullshit, but whatever. So Yeah, there's more to it, but just in a, Passover assessment, there you go. Free throws were huge in this game for sure. Good show. Got to get back to work. Later, Sage. Do you think Carlisle should have taken care more of Luka and not exhaust him so much? And is he responsible for the injury because of that? Asks MC. This is going to be my last question here that I answer, and then I got to drop out. I very much questioned the decision to send him back in there. I think, if anything, the intention, you could say in the most optimistic terms, that the intention was, all right, send him out there, but don't even, play 5-on-4 basically. Like, don't even run him off anything. Basically, just have him kind of run up and down the court a little bit. One, to see how it feels, and two, to try and inspire the team a little bit. And yeah, I don't know. The shooting did pick up, and then especially after he went out again, I think it did resonate with the team some, because the shooting picked up right after that. So I don't know. As far as Carlisle holding responsibility for his injury, as far as using him so much, Luka's averaged 33.8 minutes per game in this series. So it's not in this series that he's been worn down. As far as the bubble, yes, he had to play him a lot of minutes in the bubble, but that's also because the Mavericks were not playing well if it wasn't Luka basically holding their hand and running the entire offense. So I think that put the onus on it, and the Mavericks, say what you will about, the last game or two not mattering as much for them, they fought like hell to avoid the Clippers in the first round. They wanted desperately to move up, and they just couldn't get over the hump, whether it was failing to close out the Rockets in game 1 of the bubble, whether it was the Blazers kerfuffle there on the Dame offensive foul with 4 seconds left that wipes out a potential game winner for Dorian Finney-Smith, whether it was going to losing by 2 to Phoenix because you crumble in the clutch again. Like, you could point out 3-4 games at least in the bubble, which was only 8 games to begin with, where you're like, that's where you lost it, that's where you lost it, that's where you lost it. They wanted to move up and avoid it, and so they leaned heavily on Luka to try and make that happen. Unfortunately, it did not happen, but maybe you could say some wear and tear there, but I don't know, man. Luka's been so sensational. I think it's easy sometimes to, lean on him more than necessary, because he does so much. He makes things so much easier that you want to, it's human nature. You want to lean on what makes things easier, but if you overuse a little bit, you can wear it down. And if the Mavericks are in any conceivable way to move beyond this series this year, you got to think that Luka's already going to be on fumes by the time you get into the new series. So I don't like his chances there. But that is going to do it for my time on this show, guys. Thank you so much for tuning in. It's a rough loss again. Clippers take control of the series 2-1 with a 130-122 victory over the Mavericks. Game 4 will be Sunday at 3:30 Central Standard Time. And we'll be back that evening after the game to run it back once more. But don't forget to like this video, drop a comment below, subscribe to the Dallas Prospect, and until next time, remember, every legend was once a prospect.